and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we take on the task of making a story for you, the listener. Hi, I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
That's my first name, of course, Levi. I said it like, hi, I am, of course, Levi, as if that was my first name. Anyways, we are going to be doing our little, we finished Market Day Robots, and we are going to be doing our little Rift episode where we talk about our inspiration and talk about what we thought about the story and how it went, and we give it a score, and we just kind of give you, the listener, a bit of feedback on the kind of books we read and the kind of things we enjoy. So let's begin. If you haven't heard the last 3 episodes, go and listen to those first. That's what this is about. This is about Market Day Robots. So, what story elements did you have, Reed, for this story?
Well, I missed the first episode because
Right.
I was pretty sick.
Right.
And there have been a lot of hacking and coughing, and it wouldn't have been good. But I had Prophecy, which would normally come in the first episode of a thing, but I just kind of carried it over.
Yeah. The other one you had was Unique Restaurant, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, those were good. I had Economic System, Wise Old Woman, and then Villain at the end.
I had
Which ones? Yeah.
I think it started off with Magic System, and the second one I had the Hero.
Yep.
And in the last one I had Unique Artifact.
Hero Sidekick. Yeah, Hero Sidekick.
Yeah, Hero Sidekick. But I think, Hero, and I added in like Unique Artifact. But yeah, no, then the last one I had Hero Sidekick.
Right. So this story held a lot of parallels to a lot of different stories that I have read in the past. My Economic System with the Market Day Robots made me think of is it Charlie? No, Andy, Messenger Robot, Many Other Functions from Wolves of the Kala by Stephen King. It's part of the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
And then also some Dune references with like the Wise Old Woman being this kind of inscrutable kind of mover and shaker of the world, woman who has secret weird powers.
Right.
Do you guys often use, when you get inspiration to make story elements, do you guys often sort of trace those back to what sort of main story got you on that track in the first place?
No, not really, unless it was something very specifically that I'm aware of that I pulled from something.
How about you, Reed?
Yeah, I was thinking specifically about the Unique Restaurant. I had the notion of like Revolutionary War times where, I think of the movie with Mel Gibson, The Patriot, where there's like people meeting in a pub and then like just like holding forth, on various topics and, feathers getting ruffled and, spirited
Debate,
which really, it's an act of camaraderie where you will hold forth on what you really, really think. And then if they can't handle it, that's on them, and risking offending people. I just like that idea so much of a culture and a society that prizes, iron sharpens iron, that, where people can speak their mind and not worry that they're stepping on people's toes, just give people the respect, that they can handle it, that they can process what you're saying without getting all their, shorts in a bunch, so to speak. And I just like that idea. And that's why what I really wanted to have for the Unique Restaurant is to kind of have I called it Nexus, kind of a focal point of community intercourse, so to speak.
Right. That makes sense. So not really drawn from, as you would call it, a specific book theme, but more so drawn from a kind of idea about how the world should work. I've noticed that a lot of times I will use sort of something from a book that I've read, and I will have sort of part and parcel accepted the way that they've portrayed the characters as like a valuable philosophy in my life,
Yeah.
And part of me feels kind of bad sometimes, that I'm like figuring out the truth of my life by like reading Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I know that be happy that I was reading them, but I don't know that he would want to encourage me to sort of shape the way I treat other people, you know. But I can't think of the amount of times I've told Isaac, my brother, when something's been really difficult and something's been really hard to take in life, I wish the ring had never come to me.
Right.
You know, that line from Lord of the Rings where Frodo is sort of feeling, I would say, kind of the first weights of the ring and how terrible it is and how like difficult his life is going to be and how it is, you know? And that's something that I can really appreciate about really well-written works is that they end up sort of becoming true in so far as much as they like directly impact my life, you know?
Right. I just did a kind of, this is kind of random tangential a little bit, but the one scene, in the movie version of Lord of the Rings when we're after Helm's Deep and they're kind of regathering, back at the Golden Edoras, yes, and King of the Riders of Rohan, what's his Theoden. He is just lamenting what they're up against. They realize like, okay, all hell is broken loose, and he just is lamenting I don't want for my people. I don't want the the horrors of war and and he's just lamenting this, and then Aragorn just says, "War is upon you." Like as if yes, you're right, but what choice do we have?
Right. And I've struggled a lot with whether or not sort of taking that truth and putting it into my life and using the story as a sort of bulwark for my own life, whether or not that's right.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian, right? So I believe in a spiritual realm. I believe in a spiritual world. And I think personally, I've just decided that, the Middle Earth exists somewhere.
Yeah.
When asked about it, when someone asked Tolkien where Middle Earth was, he said, it's Earth.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
I think about the things that have shaped my life are the Council of Elrond.
Right.
Everybody is looking at their shoes except Frodo. He knows. He said, "I will take the ring, though I do not know the way." And how many there have been those times when the story is handed to me, and I kind of okay, what are my choices here?
Right.
I could hide for a while. I could run away and pretend the choice wasn't in my hand. I could pretend that everything's going to be fine, but no.
Yeah.
No.
Run and you may live.
Yes.
Fight and you may die. I just watched what was that?
Braveheart.
I almost said Strong Bad. I just watched Braveheart, and it's like that's the same thing. It's like you watch these stories, and some Braveheart's inspired by real events. So there's that. But that's one of the goals in these podcasts that we do, guys, is to take the realities that we know are true and put them into something interesting,
Yeah.
Because we don't need another stuffy theology
Right.
or philosophy book,
Yeah.
right? We don't need any more self-help. This is how you take heart books.
Right.
What is so much more powerful is the power of the imagination combined with the realities that we know are true.
Yes.
That speak forth through any book. Like if you name any book that I've read, except for the Aragorn series, I will be able to tell you. I was thinking about that for a podcast idea, basically taking books, reviewing them, and then pulling out the aspects of truth out of them and saying, this is how this book lines up with reality next, and just do a deep dive into book series and stuff. Because, I'm thinking of Wheel of Time, I'm thinking of Dune, I'm thinking of Lord of the Rings, I'm thinking of the Dark Tower series, I'm thinking of Narnia. Lightbringer series, I'm thinking of Anne McAfee's Dragon Riders of Pern. I'm thinking of, numerous one-off books.
Yeah, George MacDonald.
Oh,
The Curate's Awakening. Here's this guy, he's got a position in the Church of England, and he's he didn't inherit a lot of wealth, but he was able to excel, and he was able to get into the clergy and get a situation so he could have a nice, comfortable life, and he could take care of his duties, and he gets confronted. He gets confronted by a deformed person that most people just dismiss, but he's an intellectual, Polwarth, and he says, I think that you might have your sermon strikes me as eerily similar to this other great sermon that I had read, and this poor guy doesn't even know because he is just all he's been doing is reading his sermons from the file of his uncle who had been a lifelong preacher, and he doesn't even all he does is whip them out on Saturday and kind of brushes up and goes over them and then gets up on Sunday and reads these well-crafted sermons. Well, he didn't realize that his uncle had plagiarized this other guy, and so it was even like one even step of degradation, of loss, of distancing himself from any idea of personal integrity, even more than what this Polwarth was accusing him of. And of course, Polwarth did it with such gentleness and such kindness. He reminded me of Nathan, coming with a soft approach to King David and said, well, what would you do if someone in your realm did this? And then, David got all indignant and full of righteous indignation, of course. And he said, but it's you. That whole notion of the person that comes to his brother and speaks truth, even when it's hard, and then having something awaken, like the curate's awakening. A curate is just is like a step, not a bishop, or a step below a rector. I don't know the Victorian terms for the different offices in the Church of England, but in any case, the light was shined in a way that didn't humiliate him. He did this privately. He didn't call him out in public or anything. And gave him an opportunity to rise. And it's just a great story. I don't know why I went off on that, but those kinds of things where a character will catch up with being the person that he was meant to be. I think of Wheel of Time when Alan Mandragoran, is talking to Rand, the young protagonist, so to speak, the young, he had destiny kind of thrust upon him, right? And Lan just looks at him, says, "You're a man, aren't you? Well, then do what you have to do," and walks away. It's so clean. It was just righteous. And
right.
And I stopped dead when I read that, and yeah. What did he say? Death is light as a feather, but duty
is as heavy as a mountain.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I struggle a little bit because we make these stories week in and week out, and sometimes they're flops. I'd say the first little bit of this story was a flop. I feel like we got our wings underneath us by the third episode,
Yeah.
We'd kind of taken off, It's like you're like a bird and you're sort of running down the field, flapping your wings,
Yeah.
Like, I hope at some point I make enough sort of downward pressure to get off the air,
Yeah.
I feel like the same thing happens in our, we sit here and it's like trying to grind through the muck and mire to just find and polish that turd until it turns into something great. And other times it's like, Stephen King, Robert Jordan, H.G. Wells, Isaac Asimov, C.S. Lewis all came up with an idea and just literally gave us parts of it.
Seth, one of my favorite parts of this story was when you were coming up with the magic system, and you said that you got the idea literally from a card from a deck of Magic the Gathering that fell out of your Bible, and I just got a kick out of that just because of the import. Tell us, explain that the inspiration for the magic system again.
Well, I've got all kinds of things bookmarking in my Bible, and I guess recently the most recent addition to those were some extra Magic the Gathering cards that I had, sitting there trying to prepare something for a sermon I had to do, and so I'm reading and putting, bookmarks in, and that was kind of the most bookmarky thing, and so there's like 3 or 4 of them in there. And then I think when we were down there for Easter, doing something with one of the kids and turned around and one of them fell out, and then I think it was Isaac and Bridget were there, and they were, and then we kind of joshed back and forth about like actually carrying them, and if they had like actually held a certain amount of power. So like I think the one I had, it was like a destroy artifact, but then had like a kicker or something. If you paid 2 water mana, you could get a kicker, and then maybe exile it. I'd have to look again, but yeah. So then it would be like, you could carry one of those, and then if there was like a shooter or something,
and that was the inspiration.
You could like whip that out system. And then like destroy artifact.
I would like just
right?
For the sake of those people that are uninitiated, you guys should just explain a little bit about like
pretty much
my first initiation, I'd never heard of Magic the Gathering, this card game, except there was a kind of an argument was going on at this place where we used to gather on Sunday evenings, and this one person thought they were bad just because they were Magic, and like condemning them, like you shouldn't be, do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. It was hilarious and difficult because she was living at that house at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you respect someone while also telling them that no, the skull on this is not demonic. God, in fact, made skulls.
Yes.
So so Magic the Gathering is a competitive trading card game where 2 people sort of build decks in the interim and then sort of quote unquote fight. There's like some strategy to it. There's some, deck building components to it. Seth has just recently gotten into it, which is really great. Reed, we're still working on Reed. But I'd
say if people are familiar, it'd be a lot like
imagine
Pokemon
it like chess,
cards,
except there's hundreds of thousands of
maybe
different
like
pieces, and you get to like build your own chessboard, basically.
Well, and it's sort of like the whole collecting side of it. I know when I was a kid that my friend and I had a game that we made up with baseball cards. You could buy for a penny. Back in my day, you could get a Topps baseball card. It was wrapped up and it was a penny. And for a penny, you'd get a baseball card that with a picture of like this professional baseball player, and on the back would be all of his statistics, batting average and all home runs and all of that stuff. And then it would have a little piece of bubble gum in there,
Right.
And then you could make up teams, and when you get enough, and you'd have like you'd put in guys, and they would have different, we had like the probability of getting a hit based on their batting average and the likelihood of getting a home run, and we could roll dice, and we made up this kind of game with it. And it was like, you'd want to get the advantage by collecting more and better stars, for your team.
That sounds actually really fun. Like I would definitely play that.
Yeah.
Especially if they were just legitimately baseball cards. If it was a specific card game, like a trading card game that had the baseball stars, I wouldn't be that interested. If they were just actually baseball cards, it's like, hey, if you get baseball cards just from anywhere, you can play this game with that. I would do that. I've oftentimes thought it would be fun to make and play a sort of tabletop game that is just sports.
Yeah.
It's like, because that's all that it is, really. At the end of the day, if you're coordinating, football plays, you're talking about positioning, you're talking about flanking, you're talking about offense and defense. It's like put battalions of soldiers in there, and those play cards are just strategy styles for using heavy cavalry to flank archers.
Sure.
I've oftentimes thought that'd be fun. Not enough to like get into baseball, but enough to want to play a game about it. But anyways, that's Magic the Gathering. It's a great game. But one of the things, Reed, that I have attempted to do a lot in these, so we used to do like one-off episodes, and then we sort of switched to this episodic system. And one thing that I have attempted to do a lot is to keep every single story element separate from the last story element.
Okay.
And I think it helps our stories a lot that you don't do that, right? That I think it's really helpful in that it brings cohesive connective tissue that you make when you have a new story. When you went from prophecy, your unique restaurant was specifically about the prophecy.
Yeah.
Or your unique restaurant was specifically about the magic system.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting, where I try to, I had this economic system and then this wise old woman that was kind of connected. and then my villain, which wasn't connected at all.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I thought.
Well, it fit though.
Yeah, it does fit. You know,
Yeah.
so maybe it is connected, but I like to keep them separate. But I think it's really cool that sometimes you Deus Ex Machina it a little bit, but you know, it's okay. I really understand. The more we do these stories, I really understand what kind of happy ending Reed enjoys.
Yeah.
Not as much Seth. Seth is still an enigma because you sort of you have a lot of different weird ideas that you're sort of coming from. But yeah, anyone else have any interesting takes on this story they wanted to bring up? It sucks so much because I always feel like I would love to write more about this because I kept saying that the wise old woman, Sophia, was like this dynamic, snarky kind of. And what I was thinking of is Reverend Mother Mohayim from Dune, right? This kind of powerful, she looks old, but you know she could like kill you with a voice, with a word.
Yeah.
You know, this sort of aspect of this human being. I wanted to like tell people that she was more than what she was, but all I could say was she was snarky. And like, what is snarky, you know?
I think with that Sophia, and I don't know how it would tie into how the rest of it is, but it is, I think the name for one of the older versions of, it might be in a more Gnostic thing, but the personification of the Holy Spirit
is what? Are you serious?
Right?
I did not know
some
that.
relational
Just
connection to Sophia.
I'm telling you, man, these things write themselves.
Yeah.
You got to say more about that, Seth. I'm kind of interested.
Again, I think it comes from more Gnostic backgrounds or different things that in the early days of things these groups were kind of cast out for, as it would be, heresy. But if I'm getting it right, Sophia was the
interesting,
like feminine personification of what the Holy Spirit is. It's something along those lines. If someone knows more, like exactly, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it had something
my mouth
to do
to say her
with
name. I thought of
that
Howl's Moving Castle. And I think that the female is Sophie. So that's where I got that from. But I was just Sophie. But I was just commenting that sometimes it feels like we sort of cover a thing enough, and sometimes it feels like I want to go back. And I think at some point I might go back. Like I might the next time we do one of these 6-month short story writing things. I might go back to a previous story and write my short story based on that thing, you know, instead of coming up with a new idea, just because I think that'd be fun. But yeah.
Okay, I think it might have been more of a personification
I know that
of like wisdom or the Holy Spirit or
is given a female.
Something like that. Trying to look it up here.
I know that Proverbs talks about wisdom as a female. So that makes sense. I don't know what Sophia, the name, means. So maybe there's some mysterious connection there. Oh, that's cool. Well, I did that completely
wisdom
accidentally.
Or knowledge, I think it means. As far as the name, I think it's of Greek origin.
Well, that was before recording. I was just
Coptic.
commenting on something I read about.
Did you say something about
how
the Coptics?
Or was
that
this
before
church,
recording?
You know, flourished in Ethiopia, and then for hundreds of years was cut off from connection with the Western world by because the Islam had taken over of North Africa, and yet there was actually two groups: the Coptic Church, which was Christian, and they speculate that it rose from the Ethiopian eunuch that encountered Philip, on the road to Egypt, and then he opened, interpreted. He was reading the prophets, and Philip, illuminated them for him and showed how they pointed to the Christ and how this all story all fit together. And he said, there is water. What would prevent me from being baptized? So then the Ethiopian eunuch was baptized, and then Philip just like rematerialized back in Galilee or wherever he had been. And then hundreds of years later, they find the Coptic Church, a Christian community, had flourished for 2,000 years in the Horn of Africa. But there was also Jewish followers of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they traced back to the Queen of Sheba coming and to seek the wisdom of Solomon and whatnot. anyway, so I just had in chatting, kind of idle chatter. They claim that they have the Ark of the Covenant. Anyway, that was kind of an interesting story.
That's pretty cool. I hope they do.
Yeah,
I'd be happy if they did. I mean, better than the U.S. government.
Yeah,
right?
it was a reference of a personification of.
I don't need directed
wisdom,
energy beams,
or in some cases the Holy
Ark
Spirit,
of the Covenant,
so kind of interchangeable.
That would be bad.
Yeah.
And
it would make their faces melt.
Yeah, probably would. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better, a recap. If you have any questions about our previous episode, about why in the world we're doing this, or just, general questions you want to know about the weather, send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com, at us on Twitter at @getsbettercast, and hit us up. We're happy to answer questions. We will be back next week with a new story. Thanks, everybody. Bye.